They say walk in your truth and not in your shadows. They also tell you you're too much, making you feel like a burden, but they always want you to speak up for what isn't spoken. Unspoken truth, hiding behind an unspoken poet, unspoken stories, never get told by unspoken words.
Yo, what's good? It's your girl, Becky the Poet here. Welcome to the Unspoken Words podcast. You guys, we're at episode 102. We passed 100. I hope you guys like the last episode. We had Black Caesar here releasing his book, DFW Poet. His poetry book is called Lend Me Your Ears. We can buy it on all platforms. Reach out to him on his Instagram, Black Caesar. So for today, you guys, we have a special guest today. Go ahead and introduce yourself, special guest.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bianca Phipps. I use they, she pronouns, and I am a poet.
So today, I'm going to ask you to go into a little poetry reading for us. So go ahead and give us something short, something long, something from your book, something old, something new. Give it to us.
You got it. This poem is in my book, which is called Crown Noble. It's called Sonnet for My Daughter, From My Mother to Me. I dreamt of the lives that could have been mine. Dressmaker, horticulturist, doula, ethical hacker, hotel manager, perfumist, pilot, a bounty hunter, locomotive engineer, stunt double, dentist, sommelier, ocularist. While cradling the swollen belly that locked all doors but one. My identity was relative now. You made me mother and stole all the rest. Gilded cage mate, child, you lockpicked your way into the world and left nothing for me to eat. I starved, so I fled. You'll understand when you're older. We only get one chance to escape love.
Wow. So I remember you posted somewhere and you said you love using metaphors in your poems. So every poem that you write, do you always use some sort of metaphor to just play with people's mind?
Yeah, I think so. I think because it's a really easy way for me to translate like what is going on in my brain to to communicate with other people, to be like as specific as possible using this like very like flowery and poetic language, because like the metaphor I feel like gives me a little room to both like put a little distance between me and what I'm trying to say, while also like painting a picture that can be specific to someone else, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. I feel like it does. So you read your poem from a book. I know it's one of yours. I'm guessing it's one of your new ones.
Yes, yeah. So this is my book. It's called Crown Noble. It was published last August with Button Poetry. It's really exciting. It's like the first like chapbook really that I've ever like worked on with in like a professional capacity, like with like a publishing house. You know what I mean? And like an editor that like wasn't just like me and my friends. So it was really exciting. Kind of daunting to have like a personal collection like released out into the world for like not just strangers but like my friends and family to read, but it's been really exciting, and I don't know, I'm just really grateful that it exists, you know.
Well, I'm happy for you. Honestly, I think writing a book is very difficult. You kind of go through a very difficult editing process, and especially with poetry, it's not just one big storyline. It's like multiple poems that you have to ask yourself, is this good enough for this book, right? It's kind of like the music artists when they're trying to pick that right song for their album.
Yeah, right, exactly. It was like 3D chess, which is really tricky because I don't know any of the rules of chess. So like I had to think about like the internal structure of each poem, and then like the way that like this poem would talk to the poem before it, the poem after it, and also like all the other poems in the book, and like order and arrangement and like style and theme, and like does this poem like repeat what I'm saying in a different poem,
Right.
but better? Like what is the most like efficient way to communicate what I want with the book, which was
Right.
really fun, but really, really hard.
So for today, how are you feeling today, this week, this month, this year so far?
Today actually has been a fairly good day. Pretty busy, but like all with stuff that I really like to do, which is rare that it all sort of like stacks up on one day.
Right.
So I'm good. I'm excited to be here talking with you. This has been a very long week. Not necessarily like a bad week, just like like sometimes time feels eternal and slow.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just feels like a slow crawl to Saturday. But here we are now. So I'm doing good. This month has been fast, even though the week has been slow.
Mm-hmm.
And the year has been the year.
Yeah, it's just like it just barely started and we already have a hot mess on our shoulders.
Always. Of course.
This is how last year started, you guys.
Right.
3 months in, we're like, boom. And then like 3 months in, 2021, we're like, boom again. It's like a boom with a bang. Like,
right.
So let's see what happens in 2022. 3 months in, something else is going to happen. Dramatic. Watch.
Of course.
It's not just a conspiracy theory.
But you heard it here first.
So I always like to be positive before getting into an episode so deeply sometimes. So today, my positive affirmation is I'm worthy of any success that is coming my way. So Bianca, tell us, what is your positive affirmation for today?
My positive affirmation is that I am allowed to chase joy.
I like that. I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine, and some days you just wake up and you're just like not in the most best of mood, right? And you're just stagnant, and it's understandable sometimes to say that we are deserving of whatever happiness comes our way. And is there a difference between happiness and joy, do you think?
Oh, great question. Yeah, I think so. Why not? Because so if I had to guess, I would say I think the difference between like happiness and joy is like happiness feels like something that can last over a period of time.
Okay.
Whereas joy feels like the peaks within those
like the climax of our lives.
Yeah.
That's a very good way to put it. Add that to your next poem.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that down. Just give me a second.
So for today's topic, we're gonna talk about what we talked about in Instagram. So I know a lot of people wondering like, why is she having random conversations with me? It's honestly just to pick your brain to see where your mind is at currently at this moment in time in life. So you mentioned something that caught my eye, or my eyes. No, because I read it, right? It would catch my eyes.
Yeah. Sure.
You said something about how you want to be spending your time compared to saving your time.
Yeah.
So I do have a question. Between the two of spending your time and then saving your time, what is the difference between the two? Because people could be like, didn't she just say the same thing with different words? But in your definition, how would you divide the two?
Yeah, so spending time feels like okay. So the way that my brain works is that sometimes it just moves much faster than my mouth. It's like
that's fine.
Like a train that is running, and I'm like. So if I like pause for a second, it's just because I'm trying to be like, what are words?
Like the Einstein.
Right, exactly. Like it's like the math. Like you can see the numbers floating in front of me, and I'm like 8 + 5 is 13. Because that's where I'm at. But so spending time versus saving time. When I think about like saving time, I have like a difficult. So for example, we had this meeting today at 4.
Okay.
If I had nothing else going on this morning, I would have gotten nothing done because we had this meeting at 4. Do you know what I mean? So like when I think about like saving time, it's like this chunk of time that happens before 4 p.m. has to be saved because I have to be ready for when 4 o'clock rolls around.
Right.
Which is frustrating at times because I would like to be spending my time doing something instead of just like waiting in anticipation and feeling like I am like holding on to it, like being really like miserly and like stingy with my time because I don't want to like miss 4 o'clock, but like 4 o'clock's gonna come whether I do stuff or not.
Right.
And so like so when I think about like spending my time, like that's when like I get to do the things that I want to do with it
On
So,
your
like,
own time.
Right, exactly. So like the things that I want to do on my own time. So like this morning I spent time reading a friend's play and then like meeting with other friends to like write poems.
Right.
And I'm spending time with you.
Right.
And so like it feels a little more active and like enjoyable than this like heightened sense of like I have to save my time. Do you know what I mean?
So I kind of took that as a way of saying like, if I did, like, for example, if I didn't have anything planned for today, I would kind of waste my time doing whatever I wanted, but also like it's not like leading up to this, right?
Right.
So for example, like I have Zoom meetings coming up here. So today I had to wake up early to make sure I had the outline, make sure I set the Zoom meetings out correctly, make sure it was scheduled on time and not like Eastern or Pacific time, you know?
Right.
So if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have done that. Kind of like what you said, right?
Right.
Like because your days kind of planned out on days that are already pre-planned into your schedule.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like adding stuff to your Google Calendar. So I have some, like you have some lunch at 11, something at 5, and you're just like, all right, so so this whole day since I have this plan, what am I gonna do? And it's so funny because we input like blocks in our life that are blocked off, that we like have to go like meetings, events or whatever, and you kind of do things that day pertaining to that event or whatever it is without even knowing that you're preparing for whatever that is.
Right.
Which is funny because you mentioned that, because even I, like, you know, I question about this. Like, we have 24 hours in a day.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times we're always like, there's not enough time in this world, right? But from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, since I don't have it, like I'm not doing my day job, what did I spend those 3 days doing? You know?
Right.
And you hate answering those questions of like, people are like, what did you do this week? And it's like, I did a lot of nothing.
Right. I didn't do anything. And so like that's like especially like, so I very recently is a relative term, a couple months ago I got a job after being unemployed for a very long time,
right,
because of the pandemic and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But before then people would be like, well, what are you doing with your time? Like, how are you, like, what are you spending your time doing? And I'd be like, I don't know. What should I be doing? So like next question, which is funny because like I wish I could do nothing.
Yeah.
Like I wish that I had the ability to just like sit and like exist.
True.
But I feel like I'm always like hyper aware of like, you know, like people will say like, well, you have the same amount of time in your life as like all these famous people who are doing like all these famous things and like creating a bunch of stuff.
Right.
Like, yeah, I guess. But also like those famous people have people who like can cook
do
for
things
them,
for them,
do their laundry, right?
Right.
And like get them out of bed and like tell them how to work out or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I don't have that. It's just me, and I don't do any of that.
Well, if you need somebody to work out, we can do Zoom workouts. We can make that part happen in your life.
I need an accountability friend because I will like do
I'll definitely chime in, you know.
And that's the other thing is like I have a really tricky time sticking to a routine because I'm like, oh, I need structure in my life, and then I'll build structure, and then I'll be like, I'm just doing the same things over and over every day.
Does that get boring to you?
Spending my time. Yeah. Sorry, say that again?
So does it get boring to you?
Yes, it gets boring, and then I panic and I'm like, what about all the like tens of thousands of other things that I could be doing with my time,
right,
that I'm not doing right now, which is not good, because
I will say this, I'm not an expert in this field at all. You know, we go through daily lives. No, I'm no therapist or anything, but I will say, when you watch other people, you tend to see them doing more than you all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And in all reality, if you were to list all the things you did that day for yourself, you'd be like, oh wow, I did a lot. But we don't give ourselves enough credit for that. That's the only problem as human beings. We see others do a lot, right? But then even to them, like to you, to yourself, you're like, I'm like, dang, she had a show today, she did a Zoom meeting, she did this. But then to you, you're like, I didn't really do much, you know? Right. And not that saying it's insulting to anybody. I'm just saying like sometimes what we do isn't always as important to us compared to what others see us doing, you know?
Right. It's like all about perspective. Like, it just so happens that today is busy, and like next week I will have a day where I do nothing.
Yeah.
And that will be just as good, because the thing that I'm like trying to train myself to do is to like, it was like I said earlier, right? Like just like allow myself to find things that bring me joy.
Yeah.
And not stress too much about like what I think I should be doing, and just like focus on what I am doing instead.
Do you think during this, you know, I don't know, I guess we're still in the panini, you know, do you think that has kind of like brought that anxiety to you now? Because before this, were you thinking about how you spending your time and how you were saving it? But because now like a lot of things are still closed and a lot of things aren't as normal anymore, do you think you just kind of ponder between like the anxiety just grew on you over time because of what the change that happened in the world?
Yeah, I definitely think that like, and you know, it's like a double-edged sword, right? Like there's good things and bad things that have like come out with all of the time that I've spent with myself. But like before, I would think I was just like too busy to even like think. Like one of the things that I like really have been tripping on the past couple of like months has been like, when did I eat? And like, what was I eating?
Right.
Because like I certainly wasn't cooking for myself, and like now I'm like, I feel like I've cooked literally every meal possible, and the thought of having to do it again.
Understandable.
You know what I mean?
My household, we have cooked everything from around the world except for Ethiopian food and Egyptian food that takes quite a few time to cook. But I'm now just eating just to eat,
right?
And just, you know, living in the moment of just chicken tacos and spaghettis and whatever.
Always. Right, exactly. So I think like, yeah, I think like you said, like when everything shut down, like all of the things that I was doing before, like every single one of my jobs required interaction with large groups of people. And so I was just suddenly like alone in my house. It was just like me and my roommate and my cat.
Right.
And I was like, who am I? Without like everything that I do. So I do think that I've certainly become more aware of time and like my anxieties like surrounding it.
Right.
But also, and it deserves to be said because it is true, right? Like in the amount of time that I've spent with myself, I've also like learned a lot about myself, and have like been forced to pay attention to myself,
right,
in a way that I don't think I was doing before everything was taken away.
I can say the same too. I will say, being on the move and going to events, open mics, just parties and bars and all this stuff that you can fill up in all your like the rest of the day, right? Now that I have more downtime, I'm not going to bars as much. I'm not going to see different people as much. Literally the only place I'm probably going more often is Target, is my happy hour.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to know things about myself, and I realized that I now have more time than I ever thought I ever had. So I took that time to like clean laundry, which I'm like, I'm not saying that cleaning and laundry is a waste of time, but I'm also saying it is too.
Right.
Because I remember like we started cooking since this all happened, and you literally spend 4 hours in the kitchen and you look at the clock and you're like, it's 10 p.m. Like,
right.
what was I doing?
For what?
And like standing in this kitchen cooking, and like, oh wow, it is 10 p.m. And then you wake up and you're like doing this over again, like, you know, and it just made me realize, I was like, dang, this thing is that got me into a bad cycle, you know?
Right.
So I'm now trying to fill up more hours of my day doing things that I think that are productive to me, like working out, adding recordings, or possibly going to a random open mic or just visiting friends, right? But I feel like I still have so much time on my hand because I'm not doing the things I used to do.
Right.
Like being on the go. Like I spend less time on the road than I used to before. Like I used to get home at 8 o'clock. I'm like, oh my gosh, I did so much today. And I'm like, I get home at 8 o'clock. I'm like, went to work, worked out. That's it.
Done.
It took up more than what I thought it was going to take.
Right. Yeah. And so I'm like, what was I doing before? And like, what am I doing now?
That's different.
Yeah. Right. And like the thing about, not to keep harping on this, but like the thing about cooking that really messes me up is like, I will be in the kitchen for 4 hours and then it'll take me 15 minutes to eat the meal. And then I'm like, well, what was all of it for?
So
it was for me, right? It's like, because you gotta eat.
You gotta eat to survive, or just eat to just fill up that hunger.
Right, exactly. Nourishment. It's good for you.
Yeah, longevity, life, right?
Right. Exactly.
So I know as poets, we like to compare things, like life to things, right? So I know I was listening to a couple of videos and I ran into this thing about how I think it was a TED Talk. This guy was comparing time to money and how like and I was like, man, time and money. Like, so if I had if life was worth $100, like the time in your day, would I go broke? Would I need more time? You know? And I was like, I was kind of adding up like how much, like, all right, let's say $10 is me spending time here, whatever. I literally have about like a lot of money left. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Because in all reality, like my time that I'm using right now, I'm like, it's waste. Like I'm sleeping, I'm napping, I'm all doing all this stuff. But if I didn't nap so often, I would be more productive. I wouldn't have so much money left if I was comparing time and money together.
Right. I think like if time was money, I think I would be handling my time money the way that I'm handling my dollar money now, which is to say, poorly. Because
I really thought you were gonna say something opposite.
Oh no. So well, I guess it depends, right, on like the framework in which we are like considering what is what is good or bad on money and time. So like the way that I am I would be putting it towards frivolous things that brought me joy. So like recently I spent actual dollars on like a wax sealing kit so that I can just mail letters to my friends that look really fancy. And it doesn't really like necessarily like add anything to my life, but it does bring me like joy to like just like have like a little wax stamp. So I feel like
it's like the smallest things you put effort into to make things look aesthetically pleasing.
Yeah, and like it's fun. And then I put it in the mail and I send it away and I never see it again. And so I imagine that if I had time money, like those are the sort of things that I want to be spending my time on, which is like small things that like
bring you joy, which kind of goes back to your affirmation today.
Right. So like I'm trying to give myself permission to be like, you can be happy with small things that take time. Because like the process of like sitting down and writing a letter and then melting wax and then pouring it onto the letter and then stamping it and then like making sure it looks nice, like that takes time.
Right.
That like I could be doing anything else, but I've decided to spend my time on this. And like that's worth something.
Right.
You know?
So when I talk about things, I love to give people advice. Now, these advice is not professional advice, but Bianca, for you to give advice to anybody who's listening about how they should spend their time and how they should be saving their time, what are 3 things you can tell them?
Time is a construct, so it's not real, but it has consequences. And you get to decide what those consequences are and what those choices that lead you to those consequences are. That's one piece of advice. Does it sound like a riddle? Good, because it should. The second piece of advice is that this is all the time that you get, and it is your own personal eternity.
Oh my God, you're getting kind of morbid here.
Well, okay, so this is the thing, right? Like when we think about time, like this is something I think about constantly. If I could be immortal, I absolutely would. I would take that leap, no hesitation, just because I'm like, I want all the time in the world. But that's not how life works.
Right.
At some point, it's over. But not yet, you know? So like, make it a good eternity.
Okay.
And then the third piece of advice is that having fun is not a waste of time.
I kind of knew that was coming, like something about enjoyment, happiness at the end, because you know,
got it. It's about consistency. You know?
Right. So I do have one question I got from Instagram. Somebody asked Somebody asked where they can find your first book.
Oh my God. Okay, that's so funny. So when I was in college, I self-published a book called White River Happiness.
Okay.
I don't think you can get it anywhere. I think it's like a lost a lost relic to time. But I will say that I if people are interested, they can reach out to me and we can discuss. Like I have the PDF still.
Okay.
It exists.
Well,
So
I'll
if they
just tell
want
them to email you then.
Yeah, exactly. Just reach out to me. We could discuss.
She's not that hard to reach out to, by the way, which I thought she was gonna be.
Oh my God, no! I'm on my phone all the time.
Well, let me tell you this. You know, you see people on Button Poetry, right? Like all these videos on, you know, and your name comes up quite a bit. And so when I reached out to you, and I was like, oh yeah, she's not gonna reply back. But when you replied back on Twitter, I was like, wow, this is the last place I expect anybody to reply back to, because, you know, we're all on Instagram. And then for some reason, I thought we were like on Instagram. I was like, why aren't we following each other on Instagram? So I was like, oh, let me make sure that she knows I was reaching out to her on Twitter, which is even worse because you're like, oh crap, this fan's following me, creeping me around. But you replied back, so I was like thankful that you actually did.
Yes, well, thank you. I'm glad that you reached out, because the thing is like I don't. I think it's really cool that people want to talk to me, because of like the just like because of the work that I put out, like that like it means something that people are like taking time out of their day, because like it is kind of scary to like reach out to somebody. It's like an act of vulnerability, right?
Yeah. And
so I always want to like try my best to like reciprocate that, and I can't always. Like I'll acknowledge that like there are some messages that I read that I'm like, I thank you, and I just can't respond. But I was glad that you.
No, I'm actually glad for you to make it happen. Like for us to make it happen here. I'm gonna shoot in the dark, but I'm just gonna speak it into existence. But I will have you at one of my events. I'll even fly you out here to Dallas. You know,
I would love to.
I'll even have my cousin drive you here, because he kind of lives here, kind of lives in Illinois, kind of does something.
Yeah, we'll figure it out.
But I really appreciate you coming on the show. Before we go or anything, do you have any? I know you have your book to promote, but anything like events, like virtual events, or are you traveling somewhere? Because some poets are doing college tours. And what is your social media?
Yes. So like I said, you can buy my book Crown Noble off of Button Poetry. And I think also at like the various places where you can buy books. The only virtual event that I can promote to you right now is I helped write a virtual show called Don't At Me Please by the Slam Fam Ensemble, and you can find them and all the information on Instagram at the Slam Fam Ensemble. What was the second question?
And your social media.
And my social medias. You can find me on Instagram at Bianca Phipps, and on Twitter at Bianca J Phipps. Somebody on Twitter got that handle before I did.
Are you still doing your workshop, by the way? Because I know you're doing a workshop with writers.
So I was, but not anymore. But I am doing these like monthly like writing circles. They're not really workshops necessarily, because I'm not teaching anything. Okay. But I am. So if folks are interested, you can reach out to me on Instagram, and I'll add you to the email list. Okay. So like once a month we meet on Zoom, and we just write poems together.
Oh, nice. And I saw you had a Patreon.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I have a Patreon. So if you would like to give me your hard-earned dollars, I will give you content in return. Yeah, I'm hoping to, like, once the Patreon, like, expands a little bit, like, be able to give things like the PDF of my first chapbook, or, like a small collection of, like, National Poetry Writing Month poems that I put together this year, like stuff like that. So
nice,
if you would like to, you can come check that out. Bianca Phipps is,
and I'll include that link in whatever you'll find it. Also, before we end this episode, I like to end with something positive. It could be a joke, it could be a quote, it could be something, whatever, but it has to be positive.
Right. I have a joke.
Okay.
This is my favorite joke. I use. So I used to teach Shakespeare workshops with high schoolers and middle schoolers when we could like go into schools and stuff. So I always use this joke, and it's my favorite joke. What is a pirate's favorite letter?
I'm not okay. What is it?
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say R.
Well, you think it be R, but his first love be the sea.
Oh.
There it is. That's what I have for you. That's my humble dad joke offering for this.
Thanks. I always love when people give me jokes. But Bianca, we're gonna close off here. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe, share it. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the above, comment, review, whatever. And then we are out.